Sup, girlfriends? This is Blake here, and welcome to my review of Ant-Man. So I took last week off because none of the new releases were really interesting me, and I did not want to see Gallows in the theaters if it was the piece of shit that everybody was saying it was. And that's a major personal accomplishment for me because I just cannot say no to bad horror movies in theaters, and yet I did this time. So I was very pleased with myself, and I needed that because this last month has not been kind to me. Just one disappointment after another disappointment, and yeah, Terminator Genesis almost broke me, and I figured I did not want to put the final nail in that coffin by watching another bad movie. But we're talking about Ant-Man here, and I have to admit that at first I wasn't really sold on the idea of Ant-Man. Just the name itself screams parody, which I knew this could not be because it's taking place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know nothing about the source material, and when I heard about what his powers were, I was like, that doesn't sound interesting enough to base an entire movie around this character. I mean, he shrinks, big deal. Now, if he grew, that would be something else. Maybe if they just threw him as support in an Avengers movie, I'd be perfectly fine with that, but I'm not interested in an Ant-Man movie. But then they brought in Edgar Wright, and suddenly I was curious, because I'm a big fan of this man's work. Even when I'm not a big fan of the movie itself, like I did not like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, I still thought that he had some interesting stuff in that movie. I didn't think it was a poorly made film. It had a lot of ambition, a lot of energy, a lot of creativity. It just was a bit loud and not really my tastes, but I've really liked practically everything else he has done. Admittedly, off the top of my head, I'm only thinking of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End, all of which I loved, but I'm sure he's done other stuff that I just haven't mentioned too. But then he left, and suddenly my hopes took a nosedive again because his replacement was some guy whose name I don't even remember. I looked at his filmography, and nothing really jumped out at me as amazing. So my immediate thought was, he's a yes man, and that has nothing to do with the fact that one of his movies is called Yes Man, but the fact that when Edgar Wright left, it was because of creative differences. He was clashing with the studio who wanted him to do certain things that he did not want to do, and so after a lot of back and forth arguing, he chose to leave. Whereas since this new guy hasn't really done anything amazing that I'm aware of, it just seems like they put him there so he could be their puppet for the studio, and he'll do anything they want him to do. But still, the more I saw of the footage, the trailers, and so on, the more I began to like the possibility of this movie. The first trailer, it was pretty good, not great, but I immediately thought, at least it's kind of self-aware. I like Michael Douglas, I like Paul Rudd. Maybe this could be good. And then the main trailer came out, and I thought it looked hilarious. I'm like, okay, I am now eager to see this movie. And then the reviews came in, and almost everybody was positive, but not enthusiastically positive. And I figured that would be a problem because Ant-Man is still kind of a difficult concept to sell, and therefore it should really be focusing on being a quality film because unlike, other comic book heroes, the name brand itself is not going to be enough. You could make a Superman movie or a Batman movie, and it might not be very good, but more than likely people are going to gravitate towards the theaters in order to see them. Ant-Man, no. But at least it was getting solid reviews, so I saw the movie, and then I saw the movie the next day again, not because I loved it, but because of plans. I had already made plans to see it with a friend one day, and then plans to see it with my father the other day. So I'm a little burned out on Ant-Man, but it was good. It wasn't great. It's not the high point of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's not the low point either. It's a good movie. It's a lot different than the others in many ways. I have not checked to confirm this, but I suspect that it didn't have as much money to work with because it's nowhere near as epic, not as large in scale, not as bombastic or special effects driven as the other films are. In fact, most of what you see in the trailers is like the finale of this movie. For the most part, it plays out like a heist flick, and it has many of the cliches of the heist movie, but because that's completely different from the other Marvel flicks, that does make Ant-Man a little unique in comparison, and I do appreciate that. Uh, so it's a heist, except where characters wear super suits. Um, if I did have any real problem with this movie, it's that it does rely on quite a few cliches. Like, for example, the main character, um, the Ant Man, he uh, he went to prison, even though he was pretty much a martyr. He exposed this evil corporation and returned a lot of money to the people who this corporation exploited, but unfortunately that is illegal. So he went to prison, lost his family. He's trying to have a relationship with his daughter, but his wife doesn't really like that, even though at least they sort of toned down this cliche by making the wife a pretty reasonable person. And she has a new fiance or boyfriend, and there's once again a lot of tension there. And but because he needs money to pay child support so he can see his daughter, then he has to take that one last job, which unfortunately kind of goes wrong and leads to him acquiring the Ant-Man suit. But meanwhile, he is being trained by Michael Douglas, the person who owns the Ant-Man suit, and he has an estranged relationship with his own daughter, played by I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she's Kate from Lost. And that dynamic I've seen many times before, and that is sort of a problem, because even though Ant-Man does do a lot differently compared to the other Marvel films, I think it's doing a bit too much with the anti-hero archetype. Because in a lot of ways, I can't think of the character's actual name, which probably isn't a good thing, but the Ant-Man himself reminded me a lot of the main guy from Guardians of the Galaxy, and there are differences, don't get me wrong, but it's the same kind of persona, and I think Marvel needs to get more of a variety, different kinds of heroes and anti-heroes. With Tony Stark, Captain America, and Thor, and the Hulk, they're all very different, and same with Hawkeye and Black Widow. But I feel that a lot of the new additions are just reminding me too much of the established members, and that can be a problem down the line. But we'll just have to see. Otherwise, I still thought that these characters were very likable. Because there isn't as much action as the other films, they have to rely a lot on the dialogue, and it's very funny and sometimes even moving. But almost always I laughed when the movie wanted me to laugh. In the theater I watched the movie with laughed with me, so it wasn't just my own personal taste. It seems like most people who watch it find this stuff to be funny. And some of the supporting characters were really endearing. I loved Michael Pena, who's Paul Rudd's friend. Just every time he's on screen, he steals the show from everybody. He's hilarious. But everybody else does really well too. I thought Michael Douglas was pretty compelling as the mentor, and he actually did not seem to be sleepwalking either. Sometimes like these movies will get a respectable actor like Robert Redford or Tommy Lee Jones, and they'll play major supporting roles, but they're kind of coasting through it. Like, I still enjoyed Robert Redford in Captain America too, but I thought Michael Douglas just had more room to really act, and I look forward to seeing him in more of these movies. And I thought the love interest, she was pretty cool too. Once again, she reminded me of others. I can't think of her name either. I'm so sorry. But the she reminded me of other heroines within the Marvel universe. But still, she was pretty endearing, pretty fun to watch. I did kind of like how, even though she has her issues with both Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas, she always has like this polite businesswoman demeanor about her, and that almost makes her interactions with him seem a lot colder. While at the same time, you do sympathize with this character. She's not. I didn't feel like she was ever too mean. I always understood why she was acting the way she was acting. And I thought, Paul Rudd was very endearing in the role. I think he, as an actor, is at his best when he is in a more, I don't want to say serious movie, but in a non-comedy. I mean, this part of the fun with him here is that he does have great comedic timing, and I enjoyed, watching him play off of everybody. But when he is in a full-blown comedy, I tend to find him to be underwhelming. So I think these are the perfect kind of roles for him. But he's also very sympathetic. When he has to be more emotional, he totally won me over. The villain was a bit tricky because I felt like the movie was missing something with him. I believe he's the same actor who's the main guy in The Strain, a TV show that's, I believe, airing its second season now. I watched the first season. It was an okay show, nothing great. But I thought his acting here was good. One thing, they showed the preview to Batman vs. Superman before this played, and they show Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luger, or Luthor. I always get those two confused. Curse you, wrestling. But I did not buy him in that role at all. Nothing about him screamed Lex Luthor to me. And maybe it'll be better when I see the actual movie, but I kept thinking, this guy just looks like he'd make a better Lex Luthor. And it's not just because of the bald head either. Like, he has charisma. He has that kind of charm, but at the same time, he's very sinister. I felt, though, that the character was kind of inconsistently written and underdeveloped. And I think that to a point that was intentional, because in the majority of the origin story movies, whether it's Marvel or somebody else, the focus is on the hero, and the villains are merely stepping stones for the hero to reach a new level of development. That is why the villains in the first Iron Man are underwhelming. Captain America. I mean, Red Skull should have been more impactful, but he wasn't very interesting. Loki was the main bad guy in Thor, so he doesn't count. But like Batman, or Batman Begins, that had Scarecrow and other people, but for the most part, there wasn't a main villain who really stole the show from Batman. That's what the sequels are for. But I did think, like, they're saying he's kind of gone insane because of the experiments he's been going through, and but that doesn't really leave much of an impact when we have not seen this character before that madness really started taking hold. So, like, actually, I'm gonna have to say Green Lantern did that sort of well, and that the character is kind of pitiful because you do see him before he becomes evil, and you sort of feel bad for him. So I couldn't really feel bad for this guy, but at the same time, he is shown to be, sadistic and twisted. But they always will. Every time he starts to really build momentum as a true villain, as a villain you despise and want to see get destroyed, they'll almost humanize him suddenly, which sort of just derails that. But at the same time, so I never really knew if I was supposed to fear and hate him or pity him. So I just felt like there was something missing there, but I still thought that his acting was good. The yellow suit jacket was really cool. He was fine, but I think he could have been better. When they finally do get to the action scenes, although I guess I should say that the elaborate burglary moments. Those are pretty compelling. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing amazing, but it kept my interest, and that is what matters. But it's building up to this exciting finale, and Ant-Man's powers actually are pretty cool. I like how he controls the ants and how he can do different things with them, and it's not just him shrinking. He can move really fast, and at the same time he's really strong. So it's like, yeah, I could buy him existing within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I could buy a movie being built around him now. If they do a sequel to Ant-Man, which I'm sure they will, there's more things they could do with this character, while at the same time I do not see his powers growing stale, as long as the filmmakers are creative about it, which I believe they will be, because Marvel has done pretty well. Like even their weaker films like Thor 2 and Incredible Hulk, they're still decent. But I did love the fight scenes. Yeah, the CGI is not always perfect. Once again, fueling my suspicion that this did not have as big of a budget as some of the others. But it's good enough, and I thought there was a good mix of humor, intensity, and excitement within the finale. I love the parts that you see in the previews where like you'll see something epic going down, and then like it'll pan out in a wide shot from a normal sized person's point of view, and it's something like really small and anticlimactic, like the train gag, and they do a lot of stuff with that, and there's a certain amount of unpredictability in what you expect from the finale that just made it even more enjoyable. Things growing, things shrinking. And one of the problems with a lot of these origin story films is they seem to favor having the bad guy have a similar power to the good guy. And that to me just makes the fights a little underwhelming, such as Iron Man, for example, which is arguably the best of the Marvel films. I still felt that the final battle between Iron Man and the Ironmonger was just, it was alright. It wasn't bad or anything, but it wasn't anything exceptional. But I thought this final battle was really entertaining, nicely choreographed, and they just do so many interesting and creative things with it. So I think that's all I really have to say. Was Ant-Man great? No, but I thought it was good. I think you should watch it, at least as a matinee. That is all I have to say. Stay tuned for my vlog on Battleground, and hopefully Critiquing the Critics comes soon. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and I've done written reviews of... I don't remember. Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to have Return of the Jedi up soon. Premature Burial, an old Roger Corman horror film. Something else. So just keep an eye out on my website, and I'm also going to post a written review of Pound of Flesh, which is a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie soon. So follow me there, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys later.